For demo time, we love having products and projects that we can show off. However, the well has run a little dry, at least from where I've been able to see it. So now we've got an exciting change up here. One of the things that one of the things I've been working on a lot over the last several years is how to build things quickly. So we've got a lot of new technology that's been coming out. How do you deploy it? We've got a lot of problems that haven't been solved. I work a lot with small businesses, and a lot of times these small businesses have problems that seem very simple that are not solved. Or there are these communities that say, oh, I really would love to have a site where we could do X, Y, and Z, but this one isn't quite right, or whatever else. So I'm going to talk about rapid development for everyone. So quick show of hands, if you are intermediate or above with development, can I get a raise of the hands? Okay. If you are intermediate or if you are intermediate or below, all right, now I should see all the rest of the hands up. Okay, great. So one of the things that people don't realize is a lot of the products and services that you use, you're actually going through, like, for example, the example I like to use is if you're making a Facebook page for your business. And a lot of people don't necessarily do that. But if you can manage that level of complexity, there's a lot of tools out there you can use that you don't need to be super technical with. You don't have to use a code editor. You don't have to have a GitHub account, anything like that. So I'll be talking about one of my favorite technologies today, and I get shade for it. And they're wrong. Anybody that gives me shade for WordPress is just wrong. So, oh, yes. Why does this matter? So technology's become increasingly powerful, but a lot of times it's locked behind jargon. Now, ChatGPT's made that better, or Claude, or whatever flavor you like using. But you don't need to be technical, at least not super technical, to start solving very real problems. And we need more people to present at demo time, so I'll do some education. We'll start upskilling people, and hopefully we'll have some cool things to show off. A little later, I'll have Brendan come up. He's been working with me on some things. I've been helping corrupt him into the WordPress ecosystem. So we're going to define rapid development. What is it? I mean, it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but we'll get a little bit more detailed on it. Cover why WordPress is a game changer. Now, a lot of people, again, actually, one time I did a presentation on WordPress at Tech Alley, and a drunk guy heckled me. It's never happened since, but it was hilarious. How to avoid big tech vendor traps like AWS. Why are they always giving away those free credits? And then do a WordPress deep dive, and then an open discussion about tackling projects. So the first half of this is mostly going to be laying the groundwork, and then we can open discuss about projects or network or however else we want to do that here. So rapid development is about being fast and functional. So a lot of times companies will spend enormous amounts of money optimizing their product once it's finally ready. So this way they can have the best whiz-bang out there. But early, that's not as important. So the point here is ship fast and learn in real time. So a lot of times, one of the things that I learned, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, was I would spend a lot of time working on getting ready to launch a product. And I'd go out to the market, and as soon as I showed it to like one person, I already knew I'd made mistakes. There were miscalculations. I made the wrong thing. So rapid development is sort of an approach to say, instead of spending 10 hours building something and then going out and launching it, what if you spent an hour building a smaller version of it and then went out and got some feedback? Now, I'm using those as examples. It's not a lot of projects you can get done in 10 hours. With WordPress there are, but we'll get to that. Momentum over perfection. Right now I have a product line that's actually taking off pretty well. I'm really excited about it. And part of that is because the first folks that we talked to about it, they keep giving us more feedback about the problems that we're actually solving. And so as we're bringing on paying customers on the product we have now, we're able to build out more features to make it more enticing for the customers to stay, as well as it's opening up the market more because we're getting better insights of what's actually happening. So if you're building something quickly, getting out in the market, you can start getting those insights faster than if you were still sitting there building it. Use tools that give you an advantage. Yeah, I mean, why not? That's pretty solid. And then you avoid it over engineering. There's a lot of really cool products out there. A lot of engineers like really spending a lot of time just digging in on it. but it's really easy to over-engineer. Pros and cons. Pros, build quickly. That's nice. Lower initial investment, not spending as much money. You're not spending as much on hosting. You're not spending as much on maybe other sort of artwork or anyone else you're subbing stuff out to. You can establish a market early. So one of the things that I'm really excited about with my company is we're able to at times have a product that is cash flow positive before we've even gotten to version 2. And so if you're building enough value and solving enough of a problem early on, then it can actually cash flow its own growth and you don't end up having to sit around wondering where's investor money, things like that. And you can generate a tech surplus. So the product Brendan's been working with me on right now, he's working on basically taking us from being a little behind where we need to be with our SFS and then moving us up to MySQL. Which is going to put us in a position where we're actually able to serve our customers better than we need to for right now. So we've got a little breathing room, and we're not super committed. We don't need to get like $9 million of revenue in the next 6 months to make up for the tech that we've already built. There's always cons to everything. It's not ideal for bleeding edge product lines. If you're looking at doing an LLM, you want to do VR, immersive, there's some development is actually just very resource intensive, and you're not going to be able to use this type of approach for it. It's not for the faint of heart. A lot of times it means duct tape and crazy glue, so to speak, and you've got to have some real chops for it. There's still a high failure rate. New ventures frequently fail, so if you're building a new software product, a lot of times they're more likely to fail, but part of the argument behind doing rapid development is you get more at bats. So if you're throwing darts, you can throw 10 darts, and you can throw 10 darts for the cost of one. You're going to have overall a better chance of having one land. And another con is the cloud cult will talk shit. So those that like building on AWS and will say things like, "How's it going to scale?" That's just them. Okay. So there's a lot of approaches to rapid development. One approach is WordPress plus BigTB. Now that's my company. Now we do offer hosting services. If somebody wants to use WordPress, we can set you up, we can sell you that. Most of what we do is launching our own internal projects or doing custom work for small businesses usually. They have one thing they want to plug into another. What we find is a lot of times, for reasons I'll get into, WordPress checks a lot of boxes really right off the bat, so you can get into solving the problem without trying to set up the environment to solve the problem. So why should you upskill with WordPress? Well, all great engineering comes from a good problem statement. And non-technical people understand problems. This is one of the biggest sort of mismatches, I think, with a lot of tech innovation that's happening right now is there's a lot of really smart people working on building solutions for problems that people don't care about. And a lot of times the people that have the most incentive to solve the problem, that understand it the best, are the least technically capable. And so where WordPress fits in my ecosystem is it's a really nice bridge for being able to have, I don't think any of us are truly non-technical. I think we have semi-technical and then more technical people. At this point, people, we use our GPSs, we use email, we do searches, we edit settings and configurations and all of these other things. So there's that. Solving niche problems makes market adoption easier. So one of the product lines I'm working on right now is actually custom software for companies that make t-shirts. Not even makes t-shirts, just customize them, put the graphics on it, that kind of stuff. And it is a ginormous market, but it's not ginormous enough for, no VC is going to try to put $100 million in to try to win this market, because there isn't $100 million of business to be had at the end of it. And so what this means is my company and the way we're tackling this, we don't have as much competition, and it's a very defined market, which means most of our customers already basically either know each other or they already interact with the same ecosystems. So finding them and engaging with them is very easy. And since we're not trying to get $10 million out of it, we're gonna have a lot easier time getting that initial market, which is why I think rapid development with WordPress makes sense, because we're able to get in and deliver value without having to really deploy a lot of troops, so to speak. WordPress already runs more than 25% of the internet. I think it's actually closer to 40%. But it's not an unproven technology. Sony Music Group uses it. If you do a Google search and you say, what are some sites that use WordPress? There's tons of them. You've heard TechCrunch, whitehouse.gov, Katy Perry, Sony Music, I think Microsoft's news section. There's a whole bunch of them. So I think WordPress has fallen out of, like, not a lot of people are talking about it these days, and it was an older technology, but it stayed very relevant. There's still it's enormously powerful, more so than one might think. It's got over 50,000 plugins. Now, a plugin, let's say you're making an app and you want people to be able to log in. Okay, people make user accounts. WordPress out of the box has user management. But what if you wanted to be able to log in as one of them to see what they're saying? Well, great news. There's a plugin for that. There's actually a few. There's one I like to use called User Switch. You might think, well, how much does this cost? It's free. WordPress is a heavy open source ecosystem, which means a lot of times any problem that you've had before, somebody's already had it, and they've probably made a solution, maybe even a great solution for it. And what they'll do is frequently they'll either make it completely free, or they'll make a great version of it that's free, and then if you pay 50 bucks, 100 bucks, then you can get all of the bells and whistles and unlock even more potential and solve problems you didn't even know you had. And so by creating a project in WordPress, you instantly have access, and I'll show in a later slide where that plugin marketplace comes in, but you're able to literally just click, oh, install. It's like an app store for your app. Well, and also, while on that point, there's a lot of tools that you can use to convert WordPress to a mobile app, but all of the framework behind WordPress has all of the things that you would need to be able to convert. If you wanted to make a native app, you could do that as well, because we have database structure, file structure, all of these things that you need are already built out. They happen to display as web, but you can also port that over all sorts of different ways. Page builders, I use Elementor. There's plenty of them out there. People like all sorts of things. I'll go into, a little later, I'll go into themes. And basically it lets you change the styling of the site. So WordPress by default, and I'll get this a little bit more, it sort of frames everything up, and we'll think about it as sort of like vanilla, black and white. And then later on you can activate things that will make it style and do all of the other cool things. And the reason why you do that is it's easier to keep sort of the content of the site organized or the code organized, and then style it after, and it lets you keep those as sort of separate workflows. E-commerce, membership sites, there's all sorts of plugins to help you manage that. If you want to put stuff behind paywalls, download paywalls, give people extra access to things, a lot of the mechanics for that already exist. And because it is open source, you can actually edit every line of it. So if there's something where you say, oh, this looks great, but, well, you can just whip open the code editor and spend 5-10 minutes on it or whatever and move that last little bit without having to reinvent everything. You own the data, there's no vendor lock. So for example, folks that build on Wix or Squarespace or things like that, a lot of times they're building on a proprietary system. And with WordPress, you have access to everything. So you can download it, you can put it literally anywhere you want. There's tons of hosts that will host WordPress itself, or you can install it a bunch of different ways as well. But this gives you the ability to take your product, your project, your customer list, and you go wherever you want with it. You're not stuck within any ecosystem. So what can you build? Well, just about anything. You can build a personal or professional website. You can build an event site. Oh, I'm going to have a party, a convention, a fair, a conference. Great. You can do all of this stuff with it very easily. Job board. Online stores of all kinds. You can connect with different payment gateways so you can process the credit cards. But also, there's at least one out there that you can use for crypto. So you can actually sell things using Bitcoin or whatever else without having to use a payment gateway, and it gives you a lot of autonomy with what you want to do. So I think that's pretty cool. Booking systems for hairstylists, coaches, consultants, things like that. Again, there's over 50,000 plugins in the marketplace, and a lot of these problems aren't new problems. So maybe you're a oh, I don't know. Maybe you like doing balloons at birthday parties. Inflate them, make the things, and you want a booking site. Great, WordPress is wonderful for that. Just about anything. So, all right, Are you guys ready to start learning WordPress? Yeah? All right, I'll take it. Okay. So, I'm going to invite Brendan to come up here, and I'm going to give him a microphone to clip to his lapel, so that way. So, Brendan's a recent, well, I guess.
Recent-ish?
Recent-ish. Well, I'm going to give you this mic as well.
Oh, okay.
Here.
What do you want me to talk about? Hi, guys.
Okay, now we both have mics. So,
Perfect.
I was going to stay over here.
Oh, okay,
actually.
yeah, sure.
So you guys can watch
cross.
us. Look, we can change positions. Isn't that neat? So, Brendan, why don't you tell everybody, before we get into WordPress here a little, what type of an engineer are you?
I'm a full-stack JavaScript, TypeScript engineer. I do React on the front end mostly, and Node on the back end.
Excellent. So, before coming to work with me, had you done anything with WordPress?
I had a blog when I was younger.
And
That's about it.
Had anybody been telling you about the new and exciting opportunities that WordPress offers?
These are very leading questions, Josh.
Yeah.
No, you were the first. No, I mean, I was vaguely aware of, just how prolific WordPress was. But I had never really sank my teeth into it, and it wasn't really a sphere of engineering that I was necessarily interested in getting into, because the idea that I had with WordPress was it's blog sites, and all the stuff that people do with WordPress, it's not the kind of engineering that I had been training to do. So it was pretty illuminating just to see the stuff that Josh had been building with it.
Now, and to be fair, full disclosure, it's not just WordPress. We're running on a LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. And so there's some other stuff going on in the background. But fundamentally, WordPress checks a lot of boxes right off the bat. So if you're starting with something new, it's already done. But how hard is it to get started? All right, so we'll go over, okay. So this is the WordPress dashboard. Brendan, how many times have you seen one of these?
At this point, a lot.
Or if you close your eyes, do you still see it?
Yeah, I can see it in the sky when I look up and imagine what I'm coding.
Yeah.
It's no longer the IDE, it's the WordPress dashboard in the sky.
Yeah, and so what you're looking at here is the back end of a WordPress site. It's my campaign site from when I ran for state senate. And think about it like this. If you're working on a WordPress project, you've got the front end, which is if somebody goes to site.com, that's where they're going to go. They're going to see all those things. But on the back end is where you can access all of these different tools and do all these different things. So along the left, you see the toolbar. There's different sections for various things. Typically, as you're installing a plugin, it's going to make a menu there, and that's where you'll edit different things. So if you're making, for example, a hotel booking site, you would install a hotel booking plugin probably, and then all of the configuration that you would need would be on the left, which is why I say if you can make a Facebook business page, you can probably work with WordPress pretty effectively. You want to make a page, great. So under the pages section, there's a button. It says add page. Anybody want to guess what that does? If you guessed add page, you're correct. So what that then does is it takes you to screen. And you can put in the title of the page and put in all the content of the page. And then you can style it however you'd like. On the dashboard here, as you can see on the far right, you probably can't see it too well, but it'll show you how many views you've had on each page. And you can track a lot of analytics. And there's just a lot of out-of-the-box, baked-in features and functionality that you may or may not have thought to do that is just done for you and ready to go. Posts are a lot like pages, except this is like the blog feature. And then it's just going to feed into the blog. Themes are pretty exciting. This is how you change the styling of it. So imagine, if you will, you're looking at the text of a web page, and it's in Notepad, so it's just raw text. Imagine, if you will, you could basically just change a button from a drop-down, and it changes all of the styling of that text. Themes work like that, except for the page. So the Hello theme that I use works with a tool called Elementor, where it lets you just visually build a page without having to do a lot of the coding and heavy CSS and stuff. Now, don't worry, if you ever want to overcomplicate it, WordPress is always ready to help you overcomplicate it, so you can put the CSS in you want. If you want to do any of these tools and tricks that you're used to, you can bring them all into WordPress. You're just not stuck having to do that. Now, the plugin market. This is the part that I think is so freaking cool. So there's over 50,000 plugins. You can just search through them. And if you've got WordPress installed somewhere, there's one of the default sections on the left is going to be a plugin section. It takes you here. And people build all sorts of plugins. There's some for tracking sports teams. There's some for booking hotels. There's some for storing recipes. There's some for kind of just about anything you've ever imagined. And that's within the sort of native WordPress environment. Outside of that, there's even more. At BigTB, we end up building a lot of custom stuff as well. Brendan's actually really been helping a lot with that. You want to share a little bit about plugins and how they work and how they maybe make life easier or not easier?
Well, we can start with this broad idea that I guess if you guys haven't worked too extensively with it before, it looks like a low-code CMS, like Squarespace or Wix, right? I'm gonna drag around blocks and build sites, and I'm not gonna code any of it. I'm gonna just plug all of these pre-made tools in. But the second that I started thinking of WordPress more as an application framework or as a source of data, it started to make a lot more sense. Because unlike a lot of those other tools, all of this stuff is open, it's available, you have full access to the code, and it's basically just running CRUD on a MySQL database. Literally every plugin is just running CRUD on a MySQL database that you have full access to. So as long as you're willing to be flexible with your tool chain and adapt the way that you actually apply things, you can basically plug anything into anything else. So one common thing that I do is I glue plugins together, right? Plugin A and plugin B, they don't talk to each other, but guess what? They're both running CRUD on the same MySQL database, so you just have to build your own plugin that puts them together. And on some projects, I haven't actually even made plugins. I would just go into the server, write a node application that introspects the database and just puts all of that together on my own. So thinking of it more as a value add, something that you add and something that is available rather than something that replaces the tools that you're used to, that really makes it a lot easier to swallow for someone who's used to the kind of development that I'm used to. There's just a little bit of flexibility that's required.
Yeah, and I'll dig in just a little bit on the more technical side of it. Every plugin here. So let's say we installed the BB Press, which is that one right there. That one is a social media plugin. What it will do is it'll allow users to have profiles. You've got different messaging apps you can build onto it. There's another one called Better Messages that you could install, then you'd have Message It. They're both working with the same user table. So if a user makes a profile and they're able to log in, they're able to use all of the other plugin functionality without having to do anything extra with it. So for example, if you added a messaging app and a bulletin board app and a hotel reservation app, all of the messaging and bulletin board and reservation functionality, it would make all of those tables in the MySQL database for the WordPress site. You would have complete access to that. If you wanted to do something outside of that, you can bolt right onto it. In fact, because of that, a lot of times people run WordPress websites headless, where they're not even using the visual front end, just because it already has the database schemas figured out, manages the workflows, and there's a lot of APIs. For example, I'm doing a lot with marketing automation now, and HubSpot, Zoho, most of them are going to have plugins that natively work with WordPress. So if you've got a client that you're working with, or if you've got a project you're working on and you want to add a bunch of functionality, but you don't want to do all of the work for it, you have the option. Isn't that nice? Okay. Well, we're almost at the last slide, Brendan. Is there anything else you want to cover before we get to that?
Just want to ask you guys how much experience you might have had with it, if you've ever worked with it before, what your impressions are of it. Yeah.
So recently I wanted...
Hold up. I need to tell you about something. So YouTube, this goes on YouTube. Some people watch it, but if you don't have this little mic, no one will hear you.
All right. Hi. So, I've tried to use WordPress before on my own, and, I found that it was nice to have all the plugins, but for me, I think one of the barriers of entry was just some like monthly charges they required to kind of dive into some of the PHP stuff, which I was interested in seeing, like how to update some PHP code and how that worked. I thought it was cool to use and set, but there was just some functionality, I think, that was behind the paywall.
What monthly charges were you running into? Like for what? If you could be specific.
So as I took the mic away from him, so I'm going to touch on something because I think I'm going to get to it, but poke me if I don't catch all of it. So there's WordPress.org and there's WordPress.com. What I've been talking about, I believe, is 100% the .org part, which is the free and open source nonprofit. On the .com side, they sell their hosting, and they sell a number of other things. So there's a lot of paywalls on that end of it. If you get your own bare metal and start running your own stuff, that's the Wild West that I live in. Is that what you were referring to?
You're correct.
Okay, yeah.
Answered that.
It's
use probably the .com.
It's almost like I am into WordPress.
I mean, they have WordPress Docker images. It's completely open. You can use WordPress with anything, and as long as the plugins themselves don't cost money, the only money that you're spending is wherever you're hosting it, whether that's your own metal or if you have a VPS somewhere, or God forbid, somewhere else.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this as a piece of context, and I forget this sometimes. So I'm a system admin. I run my own network, and so for us, it's literally down to like the cost of hard drive, RAM, and bandwidth. Basically, it does, and those have gotten so cheap. When we throw the WordPress on top of it, we have enterprise grade reliability on infrastructure we maintain that makes it so it's really easy for us to be able to do this type of stuff. If you are trying to set up, and I forget this sometimes, like for example, on our stack, we've got mail servers, SSL, and a few other things that when we spin up an account, it's automatically provisioned. So you already have access to that. You already have access to PHP My Admin. So you have a web GUI you can use, go and look at it. So there's a lot under the hood with it.
But I think that it's a valid foot gun because WordPress is so prolific and it's so commercialized that it's so easy to just step on an accidental, oh, hey, pay us money and we'll do this for you. Because there are so many people that sell things for WordPress, right? Like, you probably have seen a lot of businesses that, spend way more money on hosting and a bunch of these other features and services, and you're like they think it's normal to need to spend like $80 to $200 a month just on having a basic website up, right? We have to think about non-technical people and like their impressions of like what it costs to host a website. A lot of people think that that's normal, and that's because the ecosystem is so commercialized. But the fact is, the main framework, it's open source. You could do anything you want with it. And I think as long as you're aware of that going into it, it's really just value add. It's just stuff you can add as long as you have a server.
Well, and yeah, I'll talk a little on cost. This is not a sales pitch for BigTB, but like we offer our like a base hosting at like $20 to $50 a month, and you're not having to pay per user. So if you think about like a Squarespace or a Wix, there's a lot of upcharges. Oh, you can have up to 200 items, or you can have up to 5 users, or you can have whatever. With WordPress, I've got one client, they've got 75 users. Maybe I'm doing this wrong, but they're not paying a per user license on it, because that's a part of our value propositions. We say, well, we're really easy to work with, and I'm not going to try to nickel and dime you to death. All right. Well, with that said, we are at basically the end here, and so I'm going to open up to Q&A with the prompt, if there are no questions and answers, is what do you want to build, and we can game it out. So we've got our first questioner.
Okay, so I have this was an old website. It's probably about 20 years old, and it was had a guest book. Now, the guy that wrote the guest book program is no longer existing, and there's a MySQL database with probably about at least 15,000 entries into it, but they're various. In that spreadsheet, so it's probably 45,000 bits. So, it's still up, but they came out with a new version of Apache some years ago, and this thing doesn't function on it. So it's been blocked. So I'm thinking I want to take the SQL database and put it into something, perhaps WordPress. If they have a guest book type format where you can define your database entries into it so that all these tens of thousands of things come out in the right place, in the right format on the page. Yes, doable?
Yeah, that's actually like a really great use case. Thanks for bringing it up. So there's sort of two directions we could go with that. So I'm going to rephrase what I think I heard, which is have a website from 100 years ago. I think he said 20 years ago. Now defunct, there's data in it. I'd like to get it out. If it's already in a database, we can pull it out of the database, but then we need to put it somewhere. So there's two obvious solutions, and I usually look at it in this order. Option one, go find something in the plugin store that is like what is already there. And if you install it, it'll create the schema in the database for the fields. So if you can match those up, awesome, you're off to the races. If not, you can just build it from scratch. But again, make a schema maybe just take it off the SQL table that it's in right now, put that schema in it, and then you can reference it within the WooCommerce ecosystem. And then if you wanted to do things like, for example, on one of the marketing automation tools that we're working on, when we take a customer order in, we create a user account for them. They don't actually do anything with it on the WordPress. We're actually using it as a bit of a middleware, but it helps us organize the data in the workflow. So you could take, for example, if there's email addresses in there, you could, once it's parsed in there, and if you have it organized well, and it might take, 2 to 10 hours of custom coding to line it up, now you've unlocked the door to this entire ecosystem of tools that you can use. Some of them do things like help you automatically make posts to your social media. Some of the plugins work as like a MailChimp, so you can do all of your email marketing directly from it. There's just a lot of basically any type of problem. Because if you think about it, WordPress it's a PHP-based program that just does a bunch of things. And at the end of the day, we're just moving text, pictures, and videos. That's all the internet is. And so there's a bunch of different ways to manage it. And then, yeah. So did that answer your question?
I also can add something, but I want to hear your response first.
Yeah, it answers it in a general way. I got to pull the SQL database out of there and see what all the field names are and how it's structured. I mean, the website as it is still exists and all the pages are there. It just will no longer accept any inputs. Mm-hmm. So the field names would all be there amongst the pages and in the coding. So it's not that complicated to figure out, what's going where. And as long as the SQL database is the SQL database, it should be uploadable into a new format. And it's just one of these things where it's going to go poof and disappear, or it can be put into something like this, WordPress into a format and bring it back to life. And I'd rather bring it back to life. And like I said, the guy that wrote it is no longer inhabiting the planet, so there's not going to be any update, and who knows what his code was.
Mm-hmm. Unless we bring him back to life.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this in the code. I would take the schema from that original database and just push that up to WordPress, right? I mean, you could download a plugin, so there's this low-code solution, and the plugin would probably contain a lot of the fields, but maybe the column names would be different. Maybe some things that are nullable or should be nullable or not nullable. Like you could end up with a bunch of data loss if you're not careful, and we all know this, right? My instinct, if this is like a project that I were doing, I would connect an ORM up to the old database, introspect the schema, and then connect that same ORM up to literally the WordPress database, and then just push that table up to the WordPress database, and now it's there. And now all you have to do is write a plugin that accesses that database and displays that data. You just have to move the data over. Because again, WordPress is MySQL with CRUD.
Yeah, well,
Right.
and one other thing too, just as a testament to the app marketplace, there's a tool that we've got the pro license for. I spend a bunch of money on licenses for this stuff because I do so much of it. Called WP All Import, and it's designed basically. I'm not even close to the only person that looks at WordPress and says, here's this giant awesome way to deal with database and web and file structure and all this other stuff, and just what are all the things I can do with it. So I think that one of the things that I've really liked about WordPress is whatever problem I'm going after, it's not usually there's one solution for it. It's there's 3 to 10 or more solutions, and I can pick whatever's easier for me to deploy or sort of work around there.
I think the cool thing about that is that you could do what I'm doing and build that out from scratch, or you could do literally that. Like, it's not like one of those things locks you out of doing the other. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we're like, so, and Brendan, how long have you been working with me on these latest projects? A month or two?
Since the beginning of the year.
Okay.
I
lose track of time.
The one that we're doing now, we've had many iterations
Oh,
of
that's
that,
right.
but that's been going over several months.
Yeah, and so one of the things I'm a huge fan of the community. Brendan's been here for a while. I'm a heavily extroverted engineer, which makes me really annoying to heavily introverted engineers because I want to sit there and talk, and they just want me to shut up. And that's just a part. That's fine. But Brendan leans heavy enough extrovert where him and I have been able to have some really great brainstorming sessions. And yeah, it's pretty great. So, what other questions might we have about rapid deployment or WordPress or anything else we might want to cover before we wrap? Oh, this fucking guy. I kid. Although there's someone other than you. Not everything's about you.
Thank you. So, how do you find the variants, the smaller variants produced? Are they accurate and nice? I've seen things sometimes get jumbled up when it gets down to the mobile variant or the iPad variant. I like to be able to control that a little bit more.
You mean the front ends? Like the way it appears on the...
Well, sometimes, I'd make a central page and then I'd make a smaller variant, and that variant has photograph and text overlaying jumbled up, not as clean.
Yeah, so I'll touch on the styling a bit here.
Responsive web design, right? And I think that like whenever you're using a page builder, you only have so much control, and of course you can assert your own CSS over that. I have my own gripes with WordPress themes and everything, and this is where Josh and I end up in these long conversations. Like, WordPress themes have very high specificity, so whatever styles you try to put in, if you're writing your own code, WordPress will assert that over them. Typically, I find that if I want absolute control over a front end, I'm just going to custom code the front end and use WordPress headless.
Well, and I'll say this too.
That's me.
So there are page builders and themes that are better than others. So, for example, roll back, I'm just going to facetiously say 20 years and say, okay, you want to have a mobile version of your site. I don't know, for the person that was running Windows CE on their Palm Pilot or whatever it was. You had to code, basically you'd have a little piece of code that would say, hey device, what's your browser resolution? and then it would tell them, and then you'd have to have a separate version for each one of them. So because we have so many different screen sizes now, there's a lot of variability in it. So most of the page builders that are responsive, you're going to have edge cases that aren't even necessarily small edge cases, big edge cases, where it's not styling right. So I will say, look, I am a WordPress fanboy. There is no way around that one. However, my baby's ugly sometimes. And that's one of the ways it's ugly, is in dealing with the styling. In fact, most of the time we do all of the functionality first, and then we do the styling last, because otherwise we're just going to beat our head against the wall. Does that answer your question? Yes. Excellent. All right. Now it's about you.
Yeah, I was just curious if you had advice for someone who's trying to set up a website to, host, some videos and images, and then, necessarily want to avoid some of those fees associated with hosting the videos and images. I know just sometimes when I've tried to set something up, there's stuff like DigitalOcean that, would charge to host, the video content you'd want to show to people, and I was just curious if there were some solutions you like to kind of work around those problems.
So I have a new friend in the audience. His name is Ian, and he knows I like to host videos. So videos, if you're looking at the raw compute overhead of a website, the HTML code itself, anything that's text, that is like nothing. That's child's play. That's easy. Pictures are significantly, by like orders of magnitude, more memory, but still very manageable. Video, especially if you get to like 4K, is unruly. And the higher you go up in resolution, it's almost exponential how much more bandwidth and resources it takes. So to give you a pretty detailed answer, WordPress itself natively handles video management. And so you can get some places with that. So like, for example, and I'll just speak to BigTB because I know BigTB. BigTB's hosting, we include the video and the bandwidth, the storage and the bandwidth. So it's already paid for. So as long as you stay within the limits of your plan, you've got unlimited access there. Now, let's say you wanted to cheat a little bit. There's a format called WebTorrent, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer in-browser tools that will let the users basically seed the video files to each other. So this way your site's only pushing it out in theory once, and then pieces of it are getting sharded. You can bake that in with WordPress, so it's using something like that. So this way you're actually building like a peer-to-peer CDN and not having to go to another CDN. All of those are better solutions than embedding it in YouTube, because I think that makes like you can embed the YouTube links and everything, but then like you're taking traffic off your site. But yeah, so does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, what other questions might we have? Or have we officially beat WordPress to death? All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining Brendan. Round of applause for Brendan, our local many things expert. All right.
Round of applause for Josh. I mean,
How about that? So I have one last update before we wrap this up. The update is that next month, demo time is going to change. Audible gasp from the presenter. We're going to be doing it sort of engineering for beginners. And basically what we're going to be doing is it's not necessarily like, oh, I've never done anything before, though that's fine. It's sort of first principles engineering. So sort of like how we went through today and we talked about WordPress and ways you can use it and stuff like that. We're going to spend some time trying to do that. One of the things that a lot of us would really like to see in the community is more sort of upskilling and learning. I think a lot of folks come out to Tech Alley to learn, and that's great. And I think we can lean in on that. So all that to say, stay tuned. Certainly, if people want to demo stuff, we certainly can still do that. However, we're going to hopefully be using this session for more educational content moving forward. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. Yay! Final round of applause. All right, for the remainder, you can do whatever you want.